Hey, Folk Studio here, and I want to give you guys a quick talk about the metagame and how I perceive it. But first, I just want to say that, oddly enough, this little break from recording videos has some amazing timing, just because my video card has totally died and I haven't gotten my new computer yet, so this would be a time period where I don't want to invest in a new video card, because there is a new video card coming already, so I wouldn't be able to make videos anyways. Anyhow, aside from that, let's talk about the metagame and how I perceive it. So, the metagame at its basic sense is a set of unspoken or necessarily not required rules that players tend to impose upon themselves. It's what works, and we play with what we think works. So, something like the AD support bottom, AP mid lane, and then either a tanky bruiser top lane or a second AP in the top lane would be our metagame right now. And of course there's variations. You can look at metagame just as a whole, you can look at a metagame in terms of character strengths, but essentially it's going to keep changing, and it's based more off the players rather than the game itself. And of course, changes in the game will eventually reflect upon us. You'll see characters like Urgot go from low tier to high tier to low tier, sometimes because of balances, sometimes because of nothing. But different teams have different reactions to the metagame. And I want to compare this to martial arts. So, think of Taekwondo. If you don't know a lot about martial arts, Taekwondo is kind of a joke of a martial art, but it's a really good sport. So Taekwondo, it's got a lot of rules, and when you really train for like Taekwondo, you're not learning how to fight necessarily, you're learning how to compete in this sport, and Taekwondo is really good about that. There's so many rules. If you see people do Taekwondo at the Olympics, the reason it made it to the Olympics, unlike something like MMA, is because of how regulated and how strict it is. And when you train in Taekwondo, I mean, eventually you do learn some self-defense stuff. There is actual combat in there, but it's not following these rules. So if you put someone who studies Taekwondo in an MMA situation where they're fighting against people who have studied things such as jiu-jitsu and these grapple heavy or just combat heavy, I'm gonna kick your butt martial arts, they will lose. It's just because they're playing different games. And League of Legends, think of it as an MMA arena. So there are limited rules. You can't do anything you want, but you can follow some very basic guidelines. And you'll notice that a lot of teams kind of play as if it's just Taekwondo, where there's a lot of rules, a lot of regulations. So let's just say you are a up-and-coming team. You've played a lot of solo queue. What do you do in solo queue? Do you do what works, or do you do random experiments? For the most part, people will do what they think works already, what they've seen on streams, what they've seen on tournaments. You're fighting in these very closed rules. You're fighting in a Taekwondo way. And you'll notice that teams like Dignitas and CLG are the examples I'll use. They don't follow these rules necessarily. Dignitas will come up with new strategies. They are the guys who will bring a knife into a boxing arena, but if they find a strategy that works, they will go ahead and they will use it. And they will keep using it until people find counters to it. CLG just has their own playstyle. They don't necessarily conform to the meta. This is CLG US, by the way. So CLG US, they will play what they think will work. And they've had a lot of decisions. Some people find them questionable, some people find them odd. But they are playing what they think works. And that's what matters in League of Legends. It doesn't matter if 99% of the time in solo queue you're going to see a Lee Sin top and he will beat most lanes. No, you can change things up. You can change things up yourselves as a team. If you have a top laner who will lose to their top laner unless he gets ganks, go ahead and gank like crazy. Punish their top laner because he wants to play aggressive. If they have a mid laner and you can go ahead and pick someone like Talon mid or, I don't know, Teemo, go ahead, pick Teemo. If you can make it work, make it work. The entire point of League of Legends isn't to conform to the metagame. The point of League of Legends is to play and compete to win at a tournament sense. So, if I'm playing, I don't want to go ahead and say, well, should I make this off pick because it's not popular? No, you should be saying, should I make this off pick because it will work or not? And it's something that I want to see grow. So, to compare this to StarCraft 2, StarCraft 2 I think is a good representation of a lot of different strategies. So I'm going to use the StarCraft 2 player Gumiho. Gumiho, I've watched him on the GSL. He will win games not necessarily by using a timing attack. He will just throw things at you. He will be everywhere on the map at once, just dropping using just random attacks. You have to like watch your map and just be everywhere controlling everything to deal with him. And a lot of the time, players will just crack under that pressure. Now, is that a common strategy? No, he actually has a very sloppy playstyle. Actually, no, I saw him the other day. He's gotten really good. He's really good. But he's got a kind of a sloppy playstyle when he plays like that. And does that matter in the end? Well, if a player figures out how to beat his or punish his sloppy playstyle or beat him in his pressure game, then you know what? That's a problem. But until that happens, you don't just go ahead, pressure everywhere, be a jerk and just be everywhere dropping and confusing people. Now, in League of Legends, like I said, CLG, Dignitas, they do their own thing. They do their strategies that are off the wall. They play their lanes like they want to play them. A lot of teams don't. And this is why a team like that's up and coming, that's new, will have a lot of trouble against a better team. They might be able to go ahead and beat them if they both play a straight game, but a team like CLG won't. Alright, you have your metagame, you have your standards, you have what you think should happen. If they don't go ahead and follow that, you're screwed. If they're just trying to beat you and counter everything you do because they know you're going to play that game style, you're in a bad position. So, go ahead, play League of Legends, but don't think of the metagame as a requirement. Think of the metagame as something that has some guides, has some basics, and will show you what could work. But experiment. Go do crazy things, and you know what? There are some parts of the metagame that I don't think will change. I don't think we're going to see much adaptation in the whole AD support bot lane. It could theoretically move to other lanes, to mid to top, but it won't necessarily be a good idea, and there are actually pros and cons for doing these things that teams have done. But that doesn't mean you have to have a very standard bot lane. That doesn't mean someone like Urgot shouldn't be picked, because guess what? Urgot's really good. EU and North American teams really like him now. Before it was just EU, now everybody likes him. He's so good. But you gotta play him. And you can wait for other people to discover him and play him, but why wait? Why let other people do what could be a great advantage or a cool thing for you? And yeah, go ahead, experiment, find those cool top lanes, find those cool just strategies that might work. Once again, to talk about Dignitas, they have their Soraka mid lane, Lulu top lane, make your carry or whoever you want unkillable strategy. That's a really good strategy. That doesn't fit the meta at all. I mean, their tanky dude is Mundo, but Mundo isn't really an initiator. They win their fights by being unkillable. No metagame currently adapts to that. So find your strategy, find what's cool, and do it, okay? Now if you excuse me, I'm going to go ahead and not play any game that requires a video card. Adios, folks.